On July 12, 1943, in the Bay of Biscay, 200 miles west of Brest, Dr. Paul Pfaffinger held on tight to the conning tower rail as 3 British fighter planes roared down through the hazy afternoon sky, their cannons already firing at you for 4-1. The doctor, who had only ever been in charge of a hospital ward, watched in shock as Captain Klaus Hartmann was hit by flying metal, his blood staining the bridge floor. Before we continue, show your support by subscribing and letting me know where you're watching from. The alarm to dive never went off. There would be no quick escape underwater this day. In the following 30 seconds, 10 men would be killed, 13 would be hurt, and every officer, including Hartmann, would be unable to command. The doctor, whose only training for naval combat was treating injuries, not causing them, would now have to guide a damaged submarine back to port through waters filled with enemy planes. Hartmann would live through his injuries, but Pfaffinger's temporary command would become one of the most amazing stories of the U-boat war. The change from being the hunter to being the hunted happened in less than 4 months. In February 1943, U-boats could still pick up approaching planes with their MTOX radar and quickly dive to safety with plenty of time. By July 1943, death came with no warning. The safe window between spotting a plane and being attacked, once a roomy 2 to 3 minutes, had shrunk to just seconds. For the men of Germany's U-boat fleet, the time between the first shout of aircraft and the explosion of depth charges had become the line. Between life and death, the numbers tell the tale of a technological shift. In 1942, German U-boats sank 1,094 merchant ships, adding up to 7.8 million tons, while losing only 87 submarines. This was a terrible trade-off that nearly starved Britain. A year later, everything had turned around. In May 1943 alone, the German Navy lost 41 U-boats while sinking only 34 merchant ships. The situation had flipped so completely that Admiral Karl Dönitz, the head of the U-boat force, pulled his submarines out of the North Atlantic on May 24, 1943, basically admitting defeat in the Battle of the Atlantic. What led to this disastrous turnaround? The answer was in a technology race that was decided by seconds. The Type 7 U-boat, the workhorse of the German submarine fleet, could perform a crash dive in 20 to 30 seconds in perfect conditions, getting to 25 meters deep in about 35 seconds. But these numbers meant nothing if the submarine didn't get any warning of a plane coming. The Allies' use of centimetric radar starting in March 1943, which was totally invisible to German gear, took away that warning completely. All of a sudden, U-boat crews were being attacked before they even knew planes were there. The escape move that had saved hundreds of submarines was useless when there was no time to even start the dive. The first sign of this change in technology appeared on August 27, 1942. Lieutenant Hans-Joachim Hess was on watch aboard U-94 in the Caribbean, looking at the clear skies for any hint of trouble. The submarine's Medox radar detector, a French device that could sense Allied radar signals from 6 miles away, was quiet. According to all the instruments on board, they were by themselves. Then Hess heard it, the clear sound of airplane engines right above them. The lookout's shout made the crew rush to their posts. Less than 15 seconds passed between seeing the American PBY Catalina and the command to crash dive. But 15 seconds was not long enough, as U-94's conning tower went under the water. For 650-pound depth charges landed around the submarine, crushing its hull. The Catalina's pilot, Lieutenant Gordon Fist, had come in from directly behind, using the submarine's blind spot to take them by complete surprise. His report after the mission said, "Target tried to crash dive, but was too late." Those 2 words, too late, would describe the next 3 years of submarine warfare and the early years of the war. U-boat captains had comfortable amounts of time to stay safe. The usual rule was to have 4 lookouts on the bridge when on the surface, each watching a certain part of the sky and sea. On a clear day, skilled lookouts could see planes from 8 to 10 miles away, giving them 3 to 4 minutes of warning. Captain Werner Hartenstein, in charge of U-1, showed how well these methods worked all through 1942. While in the South Atlantic, Hartenstein's lookouts spotted and avoided dozens of plane patrols. His war journal from September 1942 notes a common event, 14:25 hours. Aircraft spotted at 045 degrees, about 8 miles away. Alarm, crash dive started. First depth charges explode 90 seconds after going under, far from the boat. That 90-second safety cushion after going underwater gave the whole bridge crew time to get down the tower, the diesel engines to be turned off correctly, and the boat to get to a safe depth before any weapons hit. The numbers from this time show how confident the Germans were. Between February and October 1942, U-boats traveling through the Bay of Biscay made it through 80% of their trips without being attacked. Even when they were surprised on the surface, 90% managed to crash dive to safety before weapons were dropped. The use of ASV, Mark II radar in early 1942, at first seemed like something the submarines could handle. The 1.7-meter wavelength radar could find a surfaced U-boat at 10 to 15 miles. But its signals were easy for the German MTOX receiver to pick up. Radio operators could tell from the signal pattern when a plane had locked onto them. The signals would become constant instead of sweeping back and forth. This usually gave them 2 to 3 minutes before the plane showed up. Squadron leader Humphrey de Vere Lee knew the main problem with attacking U-boats at night. Radar could follow them to within a mile, but then the contact would be lost right when they needed to see the target. The submarine would hear the plane's engines, crash, dive, and get away in the dark. Lee's idea was brilliantly simple. Attach a 22 million candela searchlight that would light up the target the very moment the radar lost contact. The first real Lee light attack happened on June 4, 1942, when squadron leader J.H. Gresswell, flying a Wellington, lit up an Italian submarine, the Luigi Torelli, in the Bay of Biscay. Although the attack didn't work because of bad depth charges, the mental effect was huge. The dark was no longer a safe place. The first successful Lee light attack happened a month later. On July 5, 1942, Pilot Officer W. Howell caught U-502 on the surface. Captain Jürgen von Rosenstiel, the submarine's captain, had less than 20 seconds from being lit up to the bombs hitting. When U-502 was sunk 6 days later, papers found confirmed the crew's terror at being attacked without any warning in the middle of the night. The Lee light cut down reaction time in a big way. A Wellington plane flying at 120 miles per hour closed the 1-mile gap between radar failure and dropping weapons in just 30 seconds. Take away the time for the crew to react and start the dive, and the submarines had maybe 15 to 20 seconds to get underwater, which wasn't enough to get to a safe depth. By early 1943, Operation Enrage sent out 131 planes with Lee lights on coordinated patrols over the Bay of Biscay. Admiral Dunitz changed the standard rules in response, telling boats to be on the surface in the daytime and underwater at night. But this just changed when they were in danger without getting rid of the danger. March 1943 was the beginning of the end for U-boat missions. The arrival of ASV Mark III radar, working at a 10 cm wavelength with new technology, was completely invisible to German MTOX gear. U-boat crews started reporting attacks with no radar warning at all. German scientists said this was impossible, claiming no radar could work on such high frequencies. U-333 was one of the first to fall victim on March 6, 1943. While going through the Bay of Biscay, Captain Peter Kremer's official report sent shockwaves through U-boat command. No MTOX warning. Aircraft appeared directly overhead without being detected. Crash dives started while under fire. Heavy casualties from machine gun fire. Within weeks, similar reports were coming in from all over the Atlantic. U-boats were being caught on the surface in the middle of the day, at night, and in fog times when they should have been hidden. The math was grim. A B-2 for Liberator with ASV Mark III could spot a submarine at 15 miles and attack at 200 miles per hour. From the first detection to dropping weapons took less than 5 minutes. Without a warning, the submarine might have only 5 seconds from seeing the plane to the impact. Not even enough time to sound the dive alarm. The mental effect was crushing. Crews who had depended on their detection gear to live suddenly felt like they were blind. Faith in their technology disappeared and was replaced by fear. Some boats started diving at random times, just hoping not to be caught on the surface. By May 1943, the Bay of Biscay had changed from a travel route to what U-boat crews called the Valley of Death. Submarines leaving French ports had to pass through a gauntlet of planes with new radar, Lee lights, and new weapons. In April and May 1943, 56 U-boats were lost in just 2 months, many of them close to their home bases. The shrinking warning time had effects on tactics beyond just staying alive. U-boats used up their battery power at rates they couldn't sustain, being forced to crash dive over and over without enough time to recharge. A Type 7 submarine could only go 7.3 knots underwater for 1 hour before its batteries were dead. When forced to come up to recharge, they were immediately attacked again. The creation of the Mark 24 phytoacoustic homing torpedo brought another deadly threat, dropped from as low as 200 feet at speeds up to 120 knots. This 680-pound weapon had a 22% success rate, much better than the 9% for normal depth charges. Once it was in the water, Phyto would search in circles, homing in on the sound of the submarine's propellers. Between May 1943 and the end of the war, these weapons sank 37 submarines and damaged 18 more, often hitting U-boats that had successfully dived deeper than normal weapons could reach. German efforts to regain the technological lead always came too late. The Naxos radar detector, brought in September 1943, could spot centimetric radar but only from 5 to 8 kilometers away, which wasn't enough warning when a plane was coming at 300 kilometers per hour. The device was also fragile and often broke down in battle. The Schnorkel, a device copied from captured Dutch submarines and used starting in early 1944, was a partial fix that let submarines run their diesel engines while underwater. But this new feature had big drawbacks. Speed was cut to 6 knots. The diesel smoke left a trail that could be seen. The noise of the engines inside the snorkel tube made it impossible to hear an approaching plane. Denitz's desperate order on April 27, 1943, for U-boats to stay and fight planes on the surface instead of diving was a disaster. Certain Type 7 submarines were turned into U-flak boats with more anti-aircraft guns. U-441's experience on July 12, 1943, showed how pointless this was when multiple planes working together easily defeated the submarine's defenses. Even with the extra guns. At first, U-boat crews wouldn't believe that their technological edge was gone. When U-333 reported being attacked without a radar warning in March 1943, other captains thought it was just broken equipment or a mistake by the crew. The German science community swore that radar couldn't work at wavelengths shorter than 50 centimeters. Admiral Dönitz himself didn't believe the reports of invisible radar at first. His war diary from April 1943 shows he was doubtful of his crew's reports. This denial was costly. Captains who should have changed their tactics kept acting as if MTOX gave them enough warning. U-275, U-192, and U-273 were all lost in April 1943, while their crews still trusted their radar detectors. As the losses grew, they tried desperate things. The order to fight planes on the surface was a complete change from submarine strategy. U-441 was modified into an anti-aircraft boat with several cannons, but the attack, on July 12, 1943, showed it was useless when 3 fighter planes easily beat the submarine's defenses, leaving 10 dead and 13 hurt. By the fall of 1943, even the most hopeful captains knew the technology battle was lost. The use of American escort carriers meant there was constant air patrol, even in the middle of the Atlantic. Captain Wolfgang Luth, one of Germany's top U-boat commanders who had sunk over 200,000 tons of shipping, faced the truth in his last patrol report. The enemy can see us when we cannot see him. He can attack without warning. Our survival now depends not on equipment, but on luck. The mental change was complete. U-boat crews who had once sung with confidence now called their submarines iron coffins. By 1944, the life expectancy for a U-boat crewman was just 3 patrols. Out of 40,000 men who served on U-boats during the war, 28,000 would die. That's a 70% casualty rate, the highest of any military service in any country during World War II. A Type 7 U-boat crash dive was a carefully planned emergency action. It started with the bridge watch spotting danger and sounding the alarm. The loud alarm sent every crew member running to their dive stations. The bridge watch had to get off the conning tower in less than 12 seconds, sliding down the ladder in a specific order. In the control room, operators opened the main ballast tank vents and at the same time flooded the negative tank, a 70-ton backup tank at the front. The bow planes were set to the maximum down angle, 30 degrees. All available men ran to the front of the boat to add weight to the bow. The whole process needed perfect timing. If the angle was too steep, battery acid would spill and create deadly chlorine gas. If it was too shallow, depth charges would destroy them. American patrol planes took advantage of every weakness in this process. The ASV Mark III radar worked at a 9.1 GHz frequency with a 3.2 cm wavelength, making it completely invisible to German detection gear. The radar could spot a surfaced submarine from 15 miles away in calm seas. The light created 50 million candle power and was automatically turned on when the radar range dropped to 1 mile. This combination gave submarines less than 25 seconds from being lit up to impact. The attack on U-758 on June 8, 1943, showed the new reality. After reporting the position of convoy GUS-9 south of the Azores, the submarine was attacked by planes from the USS Bogue. The submarine stayed on the surface for over 30 minutes under constant attack, with crew members firing anti-aircraft guns while others got ready for an emergency dive. Only when an overwhelming number of planes arrived did U-758 manage to crash dive. 7 wounded crew members forced the boat to return to its base. On October 20, 1943, U-256 was attacked by planes from the USS Block Island. After a failed attempt to crash dive, Captain Wilhelm Bruell was killed and several crew members were hurt. The submarine's war diary noted the crew's shock at being caught with no warning, even though their detection equipment was working. The mutual destruction of U-571 in an Australian Sunderland plane on January 28, 1944, showed the shortened time frame. Flight Lieutenant R.D. Lucas spotted U-571 on radar at 12 miles and achieved total surprise by flying through cloud cover. Lucas came out of the clouds just 800 yards away, giving U-571 exactly 18 seconds before the weapons were released. As the submarine's conning tower vanished, the Sunderland's left wing hit the submarine's jumping wire. Both were lost with heavy casualties, 52 from U-571 and 11 From the Sunderland's crew, the key moment came during Black May of 1943, when the U-boat force lost 41 submarines in a single month. The battle around Convoy Ons-5 showed how impossible successful attacks had become. 17 U-boats attacked the convoy between May 4th and 6th. 6 were sunk, 11 were damaged, and not one merchant ship was lost. The numbers from this battle showed a complete reversal. Average warning time before an air attack was 8 seconds. The percentage of successful crash dives when attacked was 31%. The number of U-boats able to make successful torpedo attacks was 0. Admiral Dinnetz's diary entry for May 24, 1943, admitted defeat. The enemy's new locating devices and weapons have torn our only offensive weapon from our hands. The submarine war must be stopped until new weapons can restore the balance. U-boat missions after May 1943 were about survival, not attacking. Boats stayed underwater for up to 20 hours a day, coming up only for a short time to get fresh air and charge batteries. Even these short times on the surface brought immediate attacks. The use of the schnorkel in 1944 got rid of the need to fully surface, but it created new dangers. The device needed exact depth control. Too deep, and the valve would close, creating a vacuum that could burst too shallow, and the snorkel head made a visible wake that could be seen from miles away. Numbers from 1944 show the changed nature of submarine warfare. Average time on the surface per day was 45 minutes, down from 16 hours in 1942. Average patrol speed was 4 knots, down from 10 knots. The number of merchant ships sunk for every U-boat lost was 0.7, down from 12.6 in 1942. The closing of the crash dive window had strategic consequences beyond individual losses. U-boats could no longer coordinate wolfpack attacks. Raiding merchant ships became impossible when submarines spent most of their time underwater at very slow speeds. The outcome of the Battle of the Atlantic was decided by technology. When the window to escape closed, Germany's hope of cutting off Allied supply lines disappeared with it. American patrol squadrons went from being amateur submarine hunters to efficient killers through organized training and new technology. At Naval Air Station Jacksonville, crews practiced attacking real submarines. Practice attacks were filmed and reviewed. Crews that took more than 35 seconds from seeing a target to dropping weapons failed and had to do the exercise again. By late 1943, American planes were getting 1 kill for every 40 attack flights, compared to 1 per 200 flights in 1942. The introduction of escort carriers brought planes to the middle of the ocean. The USS Bogues Air Group sank 13 U-boats in 2 years. These small carriers showed that air power could be used anywhere in the Atlantic. Lieutenant Commander Robert Hopgood, who helped create American anti-submarine strategy, described the change. "We learned to think in seconds, not minutes. Every procedure was improved to save time. We knew the Germans needed at least 20 seconds to crash dive. Our job was to take those seconds away from them." VPB 110 became the first American squadron to use Lee lights on January 10, 1945. They perfected the false engine technique, reducing engine power during their approach to make it seem like they were farther away, then, suddenly, increasing power for the final attack. This psychological trick worked well against the already terrified U-boat crews. Ultra-intelligence from breaking the Enigma code completely changed the odds of U-boat survival. The first success in reading the Dolphin cipher in June 1941 was temporarily lost when the Rotor Shark cipher was introduced in February 1942. However, in October 1942, Lieutenant Francis Fasson and able seaman Colin Grazier from HMS Petard went aboard the sinking U-559 to get codebooks. Both men drowned when the submarine suddenly sank, but their sacrifice allowed Allied codebreakers to get back on track by December 1942. The numbers show Ultra's effect. U-boats caught while traveling to their patrol areas were 73% with Ultra versus 21% without. The average time from a U-boat reporting its position to an air attack was 4 hours. Convoys successfully guided around wolfpacks were 67%. This intelligence advantage meant that even a perfect crash dive just delayed the inevitable. Submarines forced to surface hours later were simply attacked again. The numbers tell the full story. In 1942, Germany had the upper hand. 250 U-boats were operational. 1,194 Allied merchant ships were sunk. 87 U-boats were lost. The exchange ratio was 12.6 ships per U-boat lost. The average warning time before an air attack was 180 seconds. Successful crash dives were at 89%. In 1943, the turning point, 425 U-boats were operational. 363 Allied merchant ships were sunk. 258 U-boats were lost. The exchange ratio was 1.4 ships per U-boat lost. The average warning time before an air attack was 15 seconds. Successful crash dives were at 31%. From 1944 to 1945 was the collapse. 375 U-boats were operational. 132 Allied merchant ships were sunk. 344 U-boats were lost. The exchange ratio was 0.38 ships per U-boat lost. The average warning time before an air attack was 5 seconds. Successful crash dives were at 15%. Out of 1,162 U-boats put into service during the war, 785 were destroyed, a loss rate of 67.5%. Aircraft were responsible for 250 of these losses, with another 100 blamed on combined air and surface attacks. The human toll was immense. Out of 40,000 men who served on U-boats, 28,000 died, a 70% casualty rate. Herbert Werner, who survived 5 U-boats and wrote the book Iron Coffins, described the change from confident hunters to hunted prey. We measured our lives in seconds, the seconds between detection and death. Those seconds were everything, and then they were nothing. Werner survived the war, one of only 7,000 out of 40,000 who served. His book captured the mental damage. Decades later, he still had nightmares, shouting alarm in his sleep, forever crash diving in his dreams. Dr. Paul Faffinger, who saved you for 41 after the July 12, 1943 attack, became a well-respected doctor in Hamburg after the war. In a 1976 interview, he said, "I saved more lives in those 31 hours getting the boat home than in my entire medical career. We had perhaps 5 seconds of warning when those fighters attacked. 5 seconds between life and death." At a 1985 reunion of U-boat veterans in Munich, survivors talked about their experiences. Reinhard Hartigan, who had commanded U-123 during successful missions off the American coast, reflected, "We went from being hunters to hunted in months. The technology that had protected us, the ability to disappear in seconds, was taken away. When those seconds were gone, we were just targets." The U-boat story offers important lessons for modern warfare. Current military systems rely on technological advantages as slim as those crucial seconds. The lesson is always the same: technological leads are temporary. Any system that depends on a small window of time to survive is naturally at risk. Military planners study the collapse of the U-boat fleet as an example of technological disruption. Today's stealth aircraft, cyber weapons, and submarine systems have the same basic weakness. The advantage they offer only lasts until an effective counter is created. The last Type 7 U-boat, U-990, is now a memorial at the Lebo Naval Memorial near Kiel. Visitors can walk through the small spaces where men once counted the seconds between life and death. A plaque near the conning tower says, "In memory of the 28,000 German submariners who were lost at sea." The story of the German U-boat crash dive window is one of history's clearest examples of technology deciding the outcome of a war. Between 1942 and 1943, Allied inventions squeezed the German reaction time from comfortable minutes to desperate seconds, and finally to no time at all. When centimetric radar removed any warning in March 1943, the U-boat force was no longer an effective weapon. The human stories within this technological shift show the cost of modern war. Dr. Paul Faffinger, guiding a broken submarine home after taking emergency command. Crews firing anti-aircraft guns, knowing they couldn't win. The mutual destruction of U-571 and its attacker. These moments show how technology turned individual bravery into a statistical certainty. The strategic results went far beyond single battles. When the window to escape closed, it took Germany's only hope of cutting off Allied supply lines with it. The Battle of the Atlantic, which Churchill called the most important factor of the war, was decided not by skill at sea or bravery, but by the shrinking of time through technological progress. The U-boat entered the war with a dependable way to escape, the crash dive that could save them from air attacks. This tactical advantage shaped German naval strategy, allowing for wolfpack tactics that nearly starved Britain. But the same scientific advances that had given submarines their underwater sanctuary took it away through radar, sonar, and acoustic torpedoes. For the men who lived through this technological shift, those vanishing seconds meant everything. They had bet their lives on a small margin of time and saw that margin disappear. In 1942, they had minutes of warning. By mid-1943, they had seconds. By 1944, they had nothing. The Battle of the Atlantic was won in labs and factories as much as it was on the ocean. British scientists who created centimetric radar, American workers who built thousands of patrol planes, Allied intelligence officers who broke German codes. Together, they closed the U-boat's escape window. Their victory was systematic, not flashy, technological, not heroic. Yet, within this technological fight, humanity remained. American air crews, dropping life rafts for German survivors. U-boat crews staying at their posts against impossible odds. The mutual respect between enemies. These flashes of human dignity in the midst of mechanized killing remind us that even technological warfare cannot completely remove humanity from combat. The U-boat force that started the war as Germany's top naval unit, sure of their ability to vanish beneath the waves, ended it as a broken shell. Of the young men who sailed from French ports singing of victory, 7 out of 10 would never come back. They died because technology took away the seconds they needed to live. Modern nuclear submarines never surface, which makes the crash dive a thing of the past. Yet they face their own technological weaknesses: satellite surveillance, underwater sensor networks, and autonomous vehicles that might one day shrink their survival margins just as radar and aircraft did to their predecessors. The ghosts of U-boat crews who died thinking they had seconds to spare serve as a warning to all who put their faith in technological advantages. In the harsh math of technological warfare, yesterday's safety margin is today's weakness, and today's key advantage is tomorrow's deadly flaw. The final irony is clear. The most successful submarine force in history was destroyed not by better seamanship or courage, but by the loss of less than a minute of warning time. Those seconds, counted desperately by lookouts, measured exactly by engineers, and lost forever to technology, decided the fate of nations. The story of the 45-second crash dive reminds us that in war, as in life, nothing is permanent except change itself. The German submarine force learned this lesson at a terrible price: 28,000 lives lost when their margin of safety shrank from minutes to seconds to nothing. Their sacrifice is an eternal reminder of a basic truth. In the world of military technology, the seconds you count on today will not save you tomorrow.